Parked next to me here is the 2019 Kia Stinger GT Line. This represents the entry-level model sold here in Canada, and it is still one of my favorite cars. We actually had the opportunity to feature the GT Line when it first launched in Canada a little while ago, so you can check out the video in the top right corner of your screen right now, or at the end of the video. We go over all the features, talk about everything you need to know if you're in the market for one of the best $39,000 mid-size sedans money can buy. Because we're not doing a review of this car. In fact, Kia Canada has graciously given me this car for the entire month of March to do whatever I please with it. And we're going to be doing some stuff with it. It's not necessarily a review because we love the Kia Stinger. In fact, journalists all across Canada love the Kia Stinger because it was named the 2019 AJAC Car of the Year. Not only was it the AJAC Car of the Year in general, but it also won the AJAC Best Large Vehicle in Canada. So this is a hot car, and I can see why, especially in this atomic blue color, it really does pop. So why have I asked for a Kia Stinger again, and especially the entry-level model? Well, I've been thinking about it for a little while. I picked this car up and I at first thought probably what most people would if they were to pick up the GT Line. Geez, there's no navigation. The seats are comfortable, but they're not the sport seats. And the power. The 2-liter turbocharged engine really is no replacement for the 3.3 twin turbo on the GT Limited. But then I started to think about it. If you look at, say, the 2019 BMW 330i xDrive at the base price, starts at $49,000 Canadian and comes with a lot of the same kit. In fact, it has a very similar 2-liter inline-4 turbocharged engine, producing very similar numbers. The 2019 Audi A5 Sportback also has about the same numbers for power and performance, as well as interior features. You take a look at something like the Mercedes-Benz C300 4MATIC. Again, a little bit cheaper actually, at $46,000 compared to the others. But again, similar kit, similar power. So at $39,000 Canadian, the GT Line really starts to make sense. You do have the look of the Kia Stinger. You still have a 255 horsepower engine, which is more than enough for daily use. You just lose on some of the safety and enhanced luxury tech. But when you start comparing it to what most people are buying in the 330i, C300, or A5 Sportback, this car starts to make a lot more sense. But it's not just sense based on numbers. It's sense based on everything you'd want out of a vehicle. And one of the reasons why I've been so excited to drive this, because this week marks the time that I have 6 vehicles parked here at the TestDrive garage. And out of all 6 of them, this is still the one that I'm driving the most because it is so fun, even without that 3.3-liter engine. So we are going to be doing some different things with the Kia Stinger over the next little while, because I want to be able to show you guys that this is not just a base model, that there is more to it than meets the eye. Now, we did quite a bit of performance stuff when we had the GT Limited. I'm not going to be doing a ton of it, but I will do a dig here. So we're at 0. I've put it into sport mode, which is how I only drive this car. You can put it into manual shift mode, and there are paddle shifters. I'm just going to let the transmission do it because I want to talk about that at the end. So you get turbo lag there at the start. 100. So it's not as quick, obviously, but it definitely gets up to speed. And I mean, if you're using this as a daily driver, 255 horsepower is more than enough. Going up to the 365 horsepower out of the 3.3-liter V6, you'll certainly get up to speed a lot quicker, like we've demonstrated in previous episodes. But again, the BMW 330i has about the same power. The Audi A5 Sportback has about the same power. The Mercedes-Benz C300 has about the same power. So unless you're going for the full-out performance car, this is still really good for daily use. And I've had 0 problems. Again, we went on a road trip. I was on the highway the whole time. I had to pass people. Not a problem whatsoever. And that's where I want to talk about it. This car is so close to being perfect. And I'm not talking about the base model here. I can live with it. I'm pretty happy not having all the tech stuff. Basically blind spot monitoring and a backup camera is the enhanced tech that you get on this. So yeah, it would be nice. But from a mechanical perspective, the only thing I have as a complaint for this car is the transmission. And it's not even a problem. The transmission isn't a bad transmission. But Hyundai and Kia make a really good 7-speed dual clutch transmission, and then for some reason they use it in the weirdest cars like the Hyundai Kona and the Kia Niro. So if they offered that in this and maybe made a performance tune for it, I think that would be really compelling. I think that's the one mechanical thing this is missing, both on the 2-liter engine and the 3.3 V6. But the other issue is sort of the equipment, and the problem is Kia doesn't sell, first of all, they don't sell a lot of the GT line here. People who are in the market for the Stinger ultimately go for the best one, especially here in Canada. So there isn't a lot of demand for this specific model. But that's the reason why BMW and Audi and Mercedes sell so well, is because they sell their entry-level compact executive sedans in volume, so they can offer a ton of features. So with this, you might not care about the engine. You might like the look and everything that it has going for it mechanically, but you're like, well, you know, the 2-liter engine's all I really need. Yeah, but I would like to have a sunroof or a black headliner or navigation or ventilated seats. You just can't get it here in Canada. But again, because it's such a low volume car, it sort of makes sense. So I don't know how many of these actually sell. If you take a look at any of the Kia Stinger owners groups, people just, they're not buying this one, they are buying the GT Limited. And it makes sense, because if you're looking for the same performance of a BMW 330i, this is easily a better buy. It costs significantly less. But then if you're really in the market for a BMW 330i in the first place, you could afford the GT Limited. So then this one really doesn't make sense. But I think that's one of the reasons why I was happy to take this, because yeah, it's the sleeper version of the Stinger. I mean, first of all, the car itself is kind of a sleeper. People know about it, but it's quick. But since this looks almost identical, except for the badging on the back, to the GT Limited, nobody knows this is the base model unless they get into it. So you could drive around all day and kind of be like the incognito mode of being a little bit more cost effective with your money, because it costs 10 grand less. But that is sort of the point of the video. Okay, Kia's not going to add options onto this. They're not going to add a package to give you a sunroof or anything like that. But I'm looking at this car now from the perspective of the new G20 BMW 3 Series coming out and what it offers people. If they want to stay competitive, they will have to add more stuff. So like I said, the 7-speed dual clutch transmission might be a very nice performance-oriented option that they could add to this. I'm also hoping that we'll see the new 10-inch infotainment system that Kia is using in something like the new Telluride or the 2020 Kia Soul. It's really nice and wide, has a great home screen, definitely will set the new standard for us when it comes to a consumer level navigation system. I think it looks really good and it works quite well. So if they added that, added the transmission, and had a digital gauge cluster, I think that's the one thing that is really missing on this car. And I know that Hyundai's been testing it in Korea on the Genesis G70, so it is possible that they might get something like that. But I think that would help. Some people like the analog gauges, some people don't. For me, I would prefer if it had that. But aside from that, I mean, this car is just so good. And I'll go through comments a lot, and there is a bit of a stigma around it, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because people just can't get their head around the fact that Kia can make a really good sports car. And I'm telling you, they can. This is such a great vehicle, and I'm so glad that I've had it for the time that I have. My only regret is the first 2 weeks that I had this, I had cars that I drove, but I drove this instead. The problem now, the third week, my final week with the Stinger, now that the snow is melting and the sun is out and I can put on my t-shirt, I've got something else I want to drive too. And I mean, they're equal in the sense that they're both more or less unique out in this market, so I want to be able to drive them and show them off. So that's my only regret, is this car just hasn't gotten out as much as I should have gotten it this week. But man, it is such a great car to drive. And I've said it before, if you aren't considering the Kia Stinger because you feel that Kia doesn't have the ability to make a reliable sports car that's fun to drive, because that is a mistake that you're making. I'm telling you, this is still one of my most beloved vehicles of the year. I'm telling you, if I needed a daily driver, which just based on what I'm doing, I just can't use one. Here I have a car that I don't drive. But honestly, if I needed a daily driver, this is the one that I'd go for. Even at this trim, like I said, I have gotten so used to it that I don't need the other stuff. So I can save the 10 grand, still have a fantastic looking car, performs well, drives well, just everything about it is great. I mean, you can't go wrong. As I mentioned, the Kia Stinger was with me for 3 full weeks. I drove a total of 2,428 kilometers with the car during this time, including a roughly 1,300 kilometer trip over a 24-hour period. It averaged 7.6 liters per 100 kilometers or 31 US miles per gallon during our 100 kilometer test loop in eco mode, and 8.4 liters per 100 kilometers or 28 mpg during our time with it. Considering the Stinger's 2-liter turbo engine doesn't need premium fuel, you'll be saving quite a bit each time you fill up over the competition. I spent a lot of time with this car, and I really feel that there are only 3 small things I'd change to make it the perfect car, at least for me. That 7-speed dual-clutch transmission with a proper sport tune on it would be a killer addition, giving either the inline-4 or V6 engines some improved dynamics and a much more performance-oriented feel to them. Kia's updated infotainment system is also on point, fitting in line with what luxury brands like BMW and Mercedes-Benz are using in their compact executive sedans. Finally, a digital cluster like the one being tested on the Genesis G70 in Korea would be killer, giving this already tech-oriented Stinger an even more tech feel. I talked about it during our BMW 4 Series showdown. Buying something like the 430i gives you some prestige, but buying a Stinger gives you something you can't get from your run-of-the-mill BMW, and that's exclusivity. Since filming this episode, I can count how many Stingers I've spotted on the road, and each time I notice them. I couldn't tell you how many 3 or 4 Series BMWs I've spotted. I'd lose count after a few minutes. I say to hell with the status quo and go for something that truly excites, not only yourself as the most important person when buying yourself a new car, but inspires awe from others as you drive by. You won't be doing that in a base model Audi A5, I can guarantee that.